Today we're gonna talk about evaluating argument. To evaluate an argument, first and foremost you need to identify the issue, point of view, and supporting arguments. You have to understand what an author has said. However, to judge an author's argument, you need to understand how the authors constructed the argument. You have to understand how an author has put the argument together. When an author tries to convince a reader of his or her point of view, that author will follow a form or reasoning to try to persuade the reader to agree. There are two types of reasoning. Deductive reasoning follows from the general to specific. Inductive reasoning, on the other hand, follows from the specific to a conclusion or generally. First, deductive reasoning occurs when general principles are used to reach specific conclusion. The conclusion leads to proof or data or reason. Deductive reasoning is used when the author begins with a general statement. It is assumed that the rule or generality is true. The general point leads to determining the specific. Second is inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning occurs when specific information leads to a general conclusion. Proof, data, or support makes the conclusion reached logically. Deductive or inductive reasoning does not have to do with whether or not the thesis of a reading is at the beginning or end of a passage. Instead, whether or not passage use deductive or inductive reasoning has to do with how the conclusion is reached. The first step in evaluating an argument. The first step is to identify the component of the argument or to map the argument. Mapping involves first identifying the issue, second identifying the author's point of view on the issue, third is identifying the supporting argument, the fourth and the last is identifying the type of support used to persuade the reader. Once you have determined the components of the argument, you need to evaluate the argument as a whole. As a reader, you will have to decide if an author's point of view is sufficiently supported by the evidence that is provided. While it may seem simple to construct a good argument, one in which the point of view is clear and the support is both relevant and complete is not as easy as it appears. To be a critical reader, you need to dissect an argument to make sure the information is logical and reasonable. Next step to evaluating an argument. First, map the argument. Second, evaluate the reasoning. A. Determine if the reasoning is deductive or inductive. B. Determine if the supporting arguments are relevant. Third, determine if the argument is sound. A. Determine if the argument is complete. B. Determine if the argument is believable. C. Determine if the argument is consistent. Determining if support is relevant. Evaluating an argument involves first deciding if the support is relevant to the point of view. In other words, does the support directly back up the point the author is making? Whether or not a supporting argument is relevant has to do with whether or not there are errors in the author's reasoning that make you question if your supporting argument directly relates to the point of view. The last is the tips how to evaluate an argument. First, map the argument. Second, determine if the reasoning is inductive or deductive. Third, identify the type of support. Fourth, check the credentials of the authors. 5. Determine the intended audience. 6. Determine if any types of error in reasoning is present. 7. Check the argument for relevance. And the last is the argument sound. Check to see if the arguments are consistent, believable, and complete. That's all from me about evaluating argument. Thank you for watching my video. See you next time.